Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to recap Fight to Win 240, Dante Leon versus Andrew Party. We are going to recap ONE FC, the inaugural middleweight belt for Tye Ruotolo versus Magomed Abdulkadirov, and Polaris 26 GP, headlined by Craig Jones versus Gerald Meerschaert. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine Miller, joined by co-host
Miranda.
Hey, no, Miranda.
Dude, you said your last name that time.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it on the pre-show this week. I was like, because we get a message occasionally that's, hey, man, you talk a little too quickly, and I never get the other host's name, and it's always me, and I have to, type Maine, like the state.
Oh, okay.
And they go, oh, okay. So I actually gave the full name for once, because I've also been typing it out for the interviews I've been doing for ADCC Trials. I've been putting Maine Miller, and then whoever I was fortunate enough to interview at Trials as well, and so occasionally you get the full thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I've been thinking about, do I do the full name occasionally? But once every 60 episodes, you get a full name intro. So
one day you'll get my last name. Until
maybe.
Then, you just have to figure it out.
That's a guess. You're like on social
it's
media
easy. You just have to freaking look at my matches, and my name is right there.
So as far as news goes, not a ton of news. We had some great matches this weekend. We have the inaugural Tye Ruotolo versus, I messed up Magomed Abdulkadirov's name. I'm going to call him Magomed from here on out because I for the life of me heard it on broadcast, wrote it down, and then I'm getting cold feet when we're actually doing the show right now. I'm going to call him Magomed. As far as other news this week, we also had the ADCC Open in Orlando, another sold-out Open for that organization. Seems like it had a couple little hiccups here and there with the runtime. It seemed like there was an issue with the venue got pushed out, and then they had to come back in.
It looked like they only had 4 mats. It didn't look like they had it was a huge...
No,
like
it had to be more than 4, because they had 1,600 competitors.
It looked small. The pictures I saw looked small, but maybe they had...
Maybe other pictures.
Yeah.
It could have been separated into 2 different venues.
Yeah, true.
That's
true.
When I judged Costa Mesa, they were 2 different buildings.
I think there was a powerlifting competition. I think there was.
Yeah, they were part of an expo for the event.
Okay, that's what it was.
So, but again, we're seeing some really cool highlights coming out of that.
Okay.
And you and I were talking about on the pre-show, ADCC now has, they may have had it for a little bit now,
they
have rankings.
Yeah, because when you look into the brackets and the people that are bracketed, it now has your ranking if you're in the top beside you, so that they know how to, I guess, bracket you when it gets into
They're also using a lot of those seedings for trials now.
Yeah.
So if you're doing the Opens, you're winning the Opens, you're placing at the Opens, they are taking that information and putting you into the bracket at a more appropriate slot, which we just saw at East Coast Trials we went to a couple of weeks ago. I saw all the brackets that I saw looked really, really appropriate. And I just like that there is a better, especially as the trials and the Opens grow even larger, there's a better way to give folks more appropriate seating, because ADCC doesn't have all the weird IBJJF registration rules and this where you separate everyone. It's a pretty open tournament for the most part. And as a result, all of your points in, whenever you do an Open, essentially will carry over to the other events or into trials.
Well,
I just love to see it.
I'm in Masters, but I'm ranked with the regular women competitors, the adult women too. They put us all together, where IBJJF will put you in different groups.
Well, they put you in your ranking and your age and your weight. So basically, if you compete, I understand why they do it that way.
I understand why they do it, but for somebody like me who's a Master 3, I jump between adult and Master 3.
Yeah.
So
where can I get matches?
Yeah, so I literally have points in every single age bracket.
Yeah. Which I think is unfortunate, because you're just trying to go and find matches.
Yeah.
So I like how I'm seeing the rankings being done right now. I like that is going into trials. It gives us more of a league-based structure, which we've been talking about for years and years. I think is really going to push grappling forward. I'll go on a tangent about Super Smash Brothers at the end and the outro of the show for how they do their rankings, and I would love to see that kind of done in the future. Some more almost regional rankings. Hey, these grapplers are doing really well on the East Coast, especially as ADCC potentially expands and does more and more Opens. I would love to see some more regional rankings, because that would give us greater context if people aren't going to travel as much. Hey, in Florida, this guy's a killer. We don't really see him out of Florida much, but you can see he has this many points in these Florida events, and then overall he has this many points, but in the Florida, you can see that he's a powerhouse or she's a powerhouse. Again, I really like rankings. I like numbers and stats for grappling. And I think ADCC, as it's all under the same rule set and they're running more and more events, I would love to see some more integration and them to continue to push the rankings for these seeding and for these tournaments. And again, it gives us context, gives us stake to kind of talk about them. and I love it.
Yep.
So I don't think I have any other news. Other than that, we do have Silverback Stripes. This is one of the rash guards. I've kind of talked about it for a couple of weeks now, that they have a code for our listeners. Really nice rash guards. I like them. Rachel and I both wear them. We have them. It's a company that started out of the gym, actually, is that some folks that we train with run. They're great little rash guards, and I got to find the code here because I've actually
But what you were
blanked on
showing that no one, that you actually didn't show, is that they have like one of these grippy strips at the bottom.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you've been grappling long enough, you understand why you need one of these, so that you constantly don't have your ass and stomach like shown to the world.
Well, I have a couple of them, and I'm a huge fan. I love these because I can pull it down over the cuff of the shorts, and they stay, and it's really well made. The stitching's all good. If you want to get a discount, I think it's a 10% discount. You can use code GRAPPLE10 at checkout for them. I love them. It's really, and they're nice, thick, heavy material. I think they're cut really well. They are the type of rash guards that I really like to wear. They're on the thicker side, which I really like. They breathe, but they also have that strip and strap there. I'm not having any problems with the stitching. So Silverback Stripes, if you want to get yourself a rash guard, like a high-quality rash guard, use code GRAPPLE10 at checkout. And, tell them basically Grappling Ryan sent you.
Yep.
But yeah, big fan of them, and I'm very happy that we have some of them in the house so I can wear when I train. So let's move into the recap section of the show. Miranda, where do you want to start? I want to start with either Polaris or 1FC. Do you have qualms about where you want to start the show?
No, I don't care. Let's go 1FC.
All right, let's do 1FC. Tye Ruotolo takes the inaugural middleweight belt for grappling. He kind of dominated bell to bell.
Yeah.
I wish I had more to sort of talk about. You brought up essentially that Magomed didn't get subbed here.
No.
Not for lack of Tye Ruotolo trying, but...
No, but he, at some point, it seemed like, and I could be wrong with this too, that he just kind of shut down. Where
he just shelled,
he
sort
just
of.
literally wanted to survive the round.
Yeah.
And he didn't really care how to survive, but just that he survived the entire round.
You saw him really kind of ball up, get his hands inside.
Yeah.
He never gave Tye, it was a moment where Tye had him mounted, where you saw Magomed sort of like go cross-armed over his own body.
I would probably do the same shit too.
Yeah. But again, in a world title fight, it was interesting. I was really impressed with the pace that Tye kept throughout the match. And also, there was two moments I thought that were really interesting. One, we saw Tye Ruotolo use the exact same guillotine setup that his coach, Josh Hinger, uses on everyone. And if you've ever seen Josh Hinger do... he has a great guillotine setup, but Josh Hinger is more of a fan of the arm-in guillotine.
Yeah, he is.
And Tye Ruotolo sets this up the exact same way that Josh Hinger teaches it, that we've seen him hit for years and years.
The easiest way to explain it is generally they teach you a baseball slide guillotine where you like slide your knee in and leg on top. Yeah. But Josh Hinger does kind of the opposite. He puts his leg on top before he slides his knee in. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
What I thought was interesting for this is that the way Tye sets this up hip to hip and reaches through almost like he's going for a long arm darce.
Well, because his arms are so freaking long.
He
has huge arms.
They're very long. That's why he darces so many people. Yeah. But he sits through, he kind of sells out on, and I could see, and I was like, I couldn't tell, and the arm and guillotine for me is a little bit hard to tell because it's very specific for how it hits certain body types, and so sometimes you see a guy do it, and the opponent goes out almost immediately, and other times you're like, he's not, I thought he was dead, and the guy's like, oh, it's cranking my neck, or it's over, like, so I find it personally a pretty difficult technique to see. This looked like it was really tight, and I couldn't exactly tell what Magomed was doing to get out, but if I were to guess, I would guess he sort of dropped his chest down, and he was hand fighting, and he had pulled the hand slightly away from his neck so that Tye couldn't get under him, and kind of, when you do an arm and guillotine, if you do it super straight like a standard high elbow guillotine, it doesn't quite choke in the same way. And so you see Hinger a lot of times will make this really kind of aggressive off angle, and it's traditionally what you see when you see an arm and guillotine done. You'll see kind of this big angle. You didn't see as much of a big angle that Tye made. He stopped Magomed from being able to roll by throwing the leg over the top, but he sat there for a while. Magomed eventually gets out. Tye transitions to the top. Tye, at the end of this match, is just throwing. Tye throws himself into a outside reap in Magomed's favor in order to try to shoot for a toe hold at one point because he is either like, it's one of the things I love about Tye Ruotolo is he's just going to go for it. We've seen him in some slower matches versus like De Ridder and versus someone else on ONE FC. But this match, I think because it was a world title fight, he was really looking to put a stamp on it and show like in the debut.
He also
of
probably
this
wants
belt,
that extra $50K they give you for like match of the night or something.
Yeah. He got it.
You know,
so I mean,
that's what I mean.
I love to see it.
They need to build their surf jiu-jitsu school in Costa Rica.
Which is almost done. It's almost done. I'm gonna give my mom a car, and I went, good for you, Tye Ruotolo.
Yeah, I always like it when they buy their moms things.
That is
always
very
makes
cute.
me feel.
It's always like giving back to your parents for doing a great job for helping you get to this, especially with like young athletes.
Yeah,
you like to see it because I love the recognition that young athletes have
their parents have to put up through a lot of shit to put them. Yeah, you know, like.
But I always really love when young athletes have that recognition of like, hey, thank you to my parents for being able to put me. You know, I'm here doing it. Yeah. But I would not have been able to get here without the help from my parents, and I always appreciate when they kind of give back, they give back to their family, but also on the mic recognize that like, I'm here in part because of the support from my family. Because sometimes in context with young athletes, they don't recognize that as much. The Ruotolo brothers seem to both have like great heads on their shoulders. In the post-fight, I'm not a huge post-fight fan. I listen to most of them for the show, but the Ruotolos I always tune into because it's usually pretty interesting. Yeah. I did love that Tye was so tired after this match that he didn't want to hold the belt. He kept like pawning the belt off because it's like 26 pounds, and you could tell that Tye was like, okay, I'm happy to have the belt. I do not want to hold this right now. It is very heavy. So it gives it to, I forget the ring interviewer's name, Dragon. Yeah, Dragon. And then Dragon's like, can I, like, and then Dragon's holding it, interviewing, like, this is really heavy. Can I get this back? They called Cade into the ring. Tye gives it to Cade, and it was cute. It was really cool to see the both brothers in the ring, both two champions now in ONE FC and grappling, putting on really exciting matches. I loved Tye's call out. He called out both Isaac Michel, and he called out Pedro Mourinho, which I think personally, I think Tye beats both of them. Oh, yeah. But I think they'll be fun. I think stylistically, they're both really interesting potential matchups. I think Pedro is probably stylistically a harder matchup to deal with for Tye. Yeah. I think he's a little more physical. I think he will play a little bit more reserved and force Tye to come in, which he's willing to do. But we've seen Tye kind of not struggle, but be stalemated. Again, I was at the Fight Live, the DeRitter matchup in ONE FC. I think Pedro was much more willing to play that. With the cage, I don't know if he'll be able to stall out Tye as easily. We've seen Pedro and Sug in cage matches before, but I'm still kind of interested. The Isaac Michel match, I'm really interested in as well because we saw Michel recently at AIGO. We saw him at Trials. Yeah. Not at Trials. On some other event recently. That Isaac is a really, really tough guy to deal with because he is a little bit unorthodox, but also very, very positionally sound and tends to stop a lot of scrambles. And that's really where Tye wants to create a lot of the action, especially in ONE FC, is with those scrambles. So I think both matches are really interesting, kind of for different reasons. Pedro being who's number one champion right now, I am concerned about contract exclusivity with both those guys. I know that Michel has the Who's Next title or Who's Next winner.
But the one thing that I realized is Tommy Langakker did ONE FC. Yeah. So he does a bunch.
He might have been a one-off.
That's what I mean. So you could give them a one-off to come in and go after him.
I don't know. Again, we know very little about how the ONE FC contracts are structured.
Because besides him, there's a couple people that have done them and then never did another.
Yeah, they get sort of the one-off contract. Yeah. I don't know because most of the people that have more than one match in ONE FC, we only see them in ONE FC. Like both Ruotolo brothers, we haven't seen them in anything since ONE FC. And you may be able to do ADCC. We're actually still not sure about that or not. Danielle Kelly.
It'd be stupid for them not to,
But again, the UFC doesn't let guys go and fight in other organizations. ONE FC, if you are the champion of a grappling organization, you don't want your guy to go out to another organization and get beat. I would love to see it. I think that's how you sort of maintain the strength of your champions, is getting them, hey, they got to fight through these other tournaments that are not super fight matchups. Yeah. Like that's how you keep guys interesting, long-standing champions that are still representative of the sport. But I am curious because I think Tye and Cade have exclusive contracts. We're not seeing them anywhere else. Yeah. Daniel Kelly, I think, has an exclusive contract. Nowhere else. Mikey Musumeci, nowhere else. Those are all your champions in grappling. So I also got to think on the other side of that. if you're making $50K bonus money, not even your show money, not even your win money, bonus money pretty frequently out for these matchups, why would you go? No, we know for a fact that no other organization is paying the athletes that much.
No, not at all.
So if you're making that much money, it's by far the best paying organization in the sport. Why would you go anywhere else? Like, why would you want to go and fight for less money when I can go defend a title and won for that kind of money? I mean, it makes sense. And I love to see the athletes getting paid. I am concerned that we may not be able to see either of those matchups in the near future. And I would love to see if Tye wants those matchups now as the new ONE FC champion. I would like to see him be able to get those matchups because I think they're both really interesting matchups and they're top level guys. We've seen Tye go against some MMA guys, some good guys. Magomed is a really good grappler. Like, he's been in ADCC in 2015. He went against Craig Jones twice in one day in Gi and Nogi in 2016. Craig actually did an interview after that matchup, I think in Russia or Kazakhstan, back in the day in 2016, prior to his ADCC 2017 run, between the 15 and 17 runs for him. And actually, you said he talked about it on the podcast recently, on his podcast, El
his
Segundo.
podcast, he was talking about going against him. And then, so we found it, and it was really funny because it's also the Craig Jones. If you ever go to BJJ Fanatics and you have the little Craig Jones head that pops up, that says
old school Craig Jones. Yeah,
it's like, do you want? What does it say? It says like, do you want 10% off?
No, it's not BJJ Fanatics. It's BJJ Heroes.
Is it BJ?
It's the BJ Heroes picture.
It's the okay.
So it's not. So it's actually not from this tournament because this tournament Craig has a beard.
But it's that
same rash
guard and haircut.
Yeah. So it's
when he's a little skinny.
It's the brown belt Craig Jones 2015 or 16 picture is what that's from. And it's the same era of Craig Jones. In the interview, you're like, oh, that's young. That's
it's
10
just
years
funny
because
every once in a while that little face pops up, and I'm like, you don't look like that anymore.
No, that's a 10-year-old picture at this point. So that was ONE FC. Also, the title fight between Jonathan Haggerty and Fabricio Andrade. I'm going to mess up Fabricio's last name. Was
Andrade.
What's Andrade? They say there's an E on the end of it.
Really?
Yeah.
But it's spelled like Andrade.
It is. I think it's Andrade or something like that. Because I knew I was watching ONE FC, so I looked up the YouTube to see what other matchups they had it on the card. I was going to watch the whole card because ONE FC puts out a really fun product.
Oh, yeah.
That title fight was awesome. The video lead up to that title fight was awesome. Again, we mostly talk about grappling on this show, but man, ONE FC puts on fun matches. It was basically, if you don't know, Andrade is the bantamweight champion in MMA, and Haggerty is the bantamweight champion in Muay Thai, and they fought in kickboxing, and Haggerty kicked him in the head and TKO'd him, and it was like a round and a half, and it was a banger fight. And the whole card was fun. ONE FC again is doing such a great job putting on exciting, literally mixed martial arts bouts and other disciplines within martial arts, and it's a great product. There's a reason my wife and I flew out to Denver to go see it live when they were in the country.
I would have hoped them to come to New York soon so we can go to New York.
I mean, I'm looking at going out to Bangkok for one of the cards because they're fun. Rachel and I want to go to Thailand, and so we're talking about we want to go to Fight Circus.
Yeah, Fight Circus.
And if ONE FC also happens to be in town, we're going to go to ONE FC. So it was fun. ONE FC. It was great. I'm curious to see who Tye defends against. It'd be fun to see Tye and Cade on the same card. They've done it before. Champions back to back. It would be fantastic. So moving on. Anything else on ONE FC?
Nope.
All right. Moving on to our recap of Polaris, Craig Jones versus Gerald Meerschaert. Somebody posted something that was, man, these BJJ guys really run through the UFC guys.
Yeah.
And it was, that happened. Gerald's really good. Meerschaert is...
So what we forgot to say leading up to this last week was that this whole fight is the product of shit-talking that was online.
Oh, is that why this got made?
This got made because of shit-talking, allegedly after Craig Jones lost to Brady.
Yeah, Sean Brady.
Sean Brady.
Yep.
I keep on wanting to call him Meerkat. Sorry, his name looks like Meerkat.
Gerald Meerschaert.
Meerschaert posted somewhere about how if heel hooks were allowed that he could beat Craig Jones or something like that, and he started talking shit, and that's what gave birth to this match.
Okay, that makes more sense. It was kind of a weird again,
and that's why heel hooks were legal, even though Gerard is a UFC competitor. He is an actual fighter with the UFC.
Yeah, and he's a very good fighter with I think
27. He has 27 career submissions in MMA, and I want to say 6 or 7 within the UFC.
Yeah, he's a bunch. He has, I think, some of the most submissions in middleweight. He's up there.
He has the most.
That is okay.
Yeah,
I always forget if it's him or Silva. Silva has the most finishes. But he has the most submissions
in middleweight. Yeah. So I mean, he's
a very good grappler.
He's a legit dude.
I'm not sure if we kind of talked about that. We didn't highlight his grappling accomplishments as much last weekend. This match was what? 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Minute and a half? Something like that?
Something like that.
Craig Jones came out the most aggressive we've seen him come out in.
He was.
More than ADCC.
I joked around that it seemed like he needed to be somewhere because.
Well, no, we knew he needed to go to the club and do ketamine. Apparently, is what he said on the post fight. Craig Jones comes out. He proves that he knows how to wrestle.
Yeah.
He immediately kind of tries to trip Meerschaert.
Yeah.
And then he does something interesting that we don't see a lot of guys have the confidence to do.
He hits a duck under.
He hits a duck and then he jumps his back.
Yeah.
He puts the hook in and then he just jumps on Meerschaert's back. Meerschaert kind of does the roll forward, kind of shucks Craig off to the top. Craig loops, goes for the arm. Meerschaert turns and Craig goes, back take time.
Yeah.
Takes his back, throws the underhook in for the rear naked choke, under the neck for the rear naked choke. And then he kind of snakes the hand in and kind of goes, is he going to get it? Is he not going to get it? And then you see him squeeze down and he gets it.
Yeah.
That is the entirety of the match.
That is. And
go back and watch the match.
You can watch the match on Instagram because it is that short.
Yeah.
If you go to Polaris's Instagram, it's all there.
And then Craig Jones gave so Dan Strauss, one of the on-mat interviewer and commentator for Polaris, who's been competing on Polaris and been around for a really long time in the UK scene and the international scene. Craig Jones gets on the mic and goes, yep, we're going to go to, he gives a location. He goes, we're going to go do ketamine here. And then he goes, basically Craig Jones keeps making jokes that he's going to do a bunch of drugs.
Yeah.
And we're not sure at this point actually if he's joking or not anymore.
We don't. We have no idea.
And then Dan asks him another question, and he goes, yep, we're doing that, this. I want to see these guys. And also, we are going to be here doing drugs after the show. Yeah. And then Strauss goes, yep, I'm going to get this off and talk to Gerald because I can't get this. Basically, I can't keep this interview on the rails. So thank you very much for your time. Yeah. We're going to move on. Did Craig call anyone out?
No.
Did he not?
He did not.
Okay, I thought for some reason he did. But this is sort of a return to the old Craig Jones.
He didn't come off the nose beers and ketamine kick.
Yeah, that was kind of his.
That was all he was talking about.
And I hope that somebody makes a funny clip out of that post fight.
Oh, you know they will. Come on now.
Yeah,
it's what happens.
That I really wish I had more to talk about for the match. This is the Craig Jones that we know exists, and given the right kind of not scenario, but given the right motivations almost. Yeah. This is what
maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need hookers and ketamine, and then
maybe need shit talking.
Maybe you have
to go bunch and shit talk Craig Jones to the point where Polaris is gonna make the match for Craig Jones.
Maybe after ADCC we'll have a party after.
Maybe
give him a party and then shit talk a bunch, and maybe we'll win ADCC. You never know.
Again, Craig looks really impressive here. He looks. I mean, it was a one-sided match that Craig took versus a tough UFC submission grappler.
They did interview Gerard before the match at some point, and he did an interview, and he said that he trained for this match as he would train for any UFC fight because he makes the money prize fighting and not grappling. So he didn't do a full grappling camp. He just did.
He did a full camp.
He didn't even do it. He just trained like he normally does.
Huh.
He didn't do a camp or anything. He just kind of did his own thing.
I mean, we've talked about kind of the stratification of the sport over the last couple of years where it's...
Well, and it's different because, MMA grappling,
it's very, very different.
You can punch people in the face. So you can get the half guard and chill because you can punch people in the face. You don't have to worry about them inverting under you. Because,
and you can also force positional exchanges a lot more. We've talked about it on the show for years. Whenever this kind of matchup between a very credentialed grappler and just a straight grappler come into play, it used to be, if you go back and look at the early ADCCs and a lot of like the early big grappling tournaments, they were dominated by people that kind of did both. And even when we started training, you kind of got into jiu-jitsu because you were doing MMA, you were interested in MMA, or you liked MMA, you also happened to grapple. And about probably 6 or 8 years ago, that sort of started to be where you got guys that were just straight grapplers that weren't really in MMA camps, that were just only doing grappling and weren't interested in making the switch over or doing it as a secondary thing to MMA. And the two sports have really rapidly diverged, where it's like if you have a guy, even a guy like Dorino, who's a former IBJJF world champion, moves over to MMA, gets a lot of MMA fights, he is out of the grappling a little bit and not up to pace with a lot of the current meta in submission grappling because he's focused on doing MMA, and those two sports have really diverged, where it's like the collection of techniques that are used in MMA for grappling are not as much the techniques that are used in just straight up submission grappling. And that gap is only being wider and wider. That's why when we see ADCC, when we see a very credentialed MMA fighter come in, they usually don't do great anymore because those two skill sets have diverged and that gap is only widening. So cool to see Craig Jones come and show that
but that also
he can actually win and not get second place sometimes.
Yeah, and that also shows how great Mighty Mouse is, that he goes in the gi and does worlds and fucking wins.
We talked about it on the podcast, right?
Yeah, we did.
That he won. Goddamn, Mighty Mouse is so good.
But I mean, that shows how good he is because he was in gi.
Was he in Masters gi?
He was in Masters gi. He was at Masters Worlds, but still, he was still Masters gi and like didn't get choked out by anybody
and won most by submissions.
Yeah, I wouldn't have like.
But Mighty Mouse is also Mighty Mouse. You're like he's one.
Well, I was thinking about like the top MMA guys versus the top jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah.
And what top MMA guys would actually hang or win. Initially, I was thinking about John Jones, but I think John Jones would get foot locked because he has some long ass legs.
Yeah, the skills. I mean,
it's two completely different things.
And they've even gotten further and further apart.
So when you get an MMA fighter that can go in and do jiu-jitsu at a very high level, it's pretty amazing.
It's pretty rare too. Yeah. Usually they go from MMA from jiu-jitsu to MMA and then don't look back because there's a shitload more money in MMA, and so it's like, well, I'm making 18 times as much and I'm an international superstar in this sport.
Yeah.
There was a post today I saw unrelated. It was the top grappling Instagram people and the top MMA fighters. Yeah. And it was like Gordon Ryan and Kyra Gracie were both at 1 million followers. And I was like, that's an interesting. John Jones was like at 8 million. He was like maybe not top 5. McGregor was like 36 million. Khabib was like 50 million. Yeah. Islam Makhachev was like 3.8 million or something.
They also have, you have to think about, you have an entire nation or an entire kind of religious group that then follows you. You know what I mean? And so you get this like ridiculously huge, large group.
You're prize fighting. You're a superstar in prize fighting, which is a much higher interest for a casual
viewer.
Khabib
probably gets all of Dagestan, and then most of the Muslim faith gentlemen,
and a lot of the Russian population.
So you get that whole
huge populations that follow them as fighters, whereas the grappling niche is much, much smaller. So if you can go from grappling in MMA and make a wildly more successful, larger, and financially lucrative career, it makes sense you would do that. So I got nothing else on the main event. Let's move to the co-main event.
Completely went off on a different tangent.
Still talking about grappling.
But this is what happens.
We had Kendall Reusing defeating Leticia Cardozo via decision. Pretty standard not one-sided, but pretty clean decision on my end. We didn't really know what Kendall was going to look like coming into this matchup. For the first 5 minutes of a 10-minute match, it was standing, pushing, shoving, kind of wrestling.
It was Kendall using her extra 30 pounds to push Leticia out.
Yeah, and it's an open weight title fight. Yeah. That's what you should do.
Yeah.
And then they did a get down rule. Kendall hits, I think, the best move of the night, which is a really nice driving ankle pick over to put Cardozo on the back. Kendall moves into the top of half guard, sits in the top of half guard for about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Leticia at one point reaches over and grabs like a guillotine from the bottom of half guard.
I don't know
Kendall
what that was about.
Kind of starts to try to Von Flue, sort of, kind of uses it to pass, eventually gets through. And that was the match.
Yep.
Kendall pretty much dominant from the top for the second half of the match. I really would have. This is where I'm a huge fan of Polaris. Polaris is by far, I think, the best organization in Europe. I will never miss a Polaris card. And they change their rules pretty frequently.
Yeah.
I would love them to adopt the ADCC style of pushing for action and mandating action, because the first 5 minutes of this match, we could have had stalling penalties, action. I think you could have seen more from both women here had there been more aggressive and had there been stalling calls, essentially.
Yeah.
I think we would have seen a more interesting game. I think we would have seen Kendall with more urgency on top from dominant position to get through. I think we would have seen the ability for both women to play some more game.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that from Polaris in the future, is adopt a criteria for action and engagement, because we have that sort of get down rule.
Yeah.
But I think we needed to see it earlier here, because we got through half the match with functionally nothing really occurring on the feet before that happened. Again, Kendall retains her title. Kendall still looks good. I would have loved to see more from her game here. I want to see Kendall versus Amanda Leve again.
Yeah.
Now, Leve's healed up and back in grappling and taking the U.S. trials here for the women at above 65. And I would love to see her against Amy Campo. We've seen Campo before on Polaris, your current ADCC champion, versus, again, Kendall, very credentialed ADCC trials winner.
Yeah.
ADCC medalist or no?
Who?
Kendall.
Kendall lost.
But she was in it a couple years prior. I don't ever remember if Kendall has a medal at ADCC, unfortunately. But those are some matchups I would really like to see. And I would love, again, Polaris to have a method to push the action more aggressively when it slows down, especially in these title fights. Yeah. Molly McCann defeats Julia Scardone via armbar. McCann's good.
Yeah, McCann is good.
Gets down to the guard, immediately switches the hips, gets up high on Julia's arm. Scardone comes over like she's going to kind of like drive through, and Molly McCann is able to hip up and turn and get the arm fully extended.
Yeah.
The match is pretty short overall once they get to the ground.
It was a pretty sweet armbar setup too, because it was Julia trying to Uchimata, and as she went to Uchimata, Molly was like, "Oh, gonna overhook your arm and armbar."
And then within she goes to guard, and then from that overhook, she gets there. It was super clean.
But it seemed like she had set it up, like it was. That's where she was going.
Well, because Julia talked about,
and I never thought about that
pre-interview.
I never really thought about that.
Well, it's something we used to see Ronda do a lot. Ronda used to do from that same overhook off the Uchimata. Used to jump and then right over the top of the head. Which is funny because Julia talked about having the judo background and it being like the best base for submission grappling or MMA. It was interesting that Molly was able to capitalize off of that throw in order to do that, which is something, again, we've historically seen judokas do. Yeah. So Molly McCann, again, another UFC fighter coming on the card, gets a submission. I would like to see McCann back on the card. Yeah. She, again, exciting. Pushed it. Was a real quick match and finish, and one of two on the main card for submissions. Yeah. Moving on to Tommy Langakker versus Oliver Taza. Langakker, again, 2 weekends in a row beats Taza by decision here. I think European Nogi Championships, it was points.
Nope, it was an advantage.
Yeah. Langakker eats, I think, the grossest submission of the weekend.
Yeah, pretty much.
Probably,
so.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if anything happened that I saw that was worse. No, I think that's the nastiest.
I haven't seen all the ADCC footage yet. I assume there's something grosser there.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but...
Oliver Taza, we've talked about him on the show for years and years and years. One of, if not the best, outside heel hook knee bar combination fighters in the sport. He gets Tommy Langakker in like a saddle entry and then starts cranking and turns Tommy's foot about probably 120 degrees.
Yeah, if you go to their...
Or not quite 120.
If you go to the Polaris Instagram page, they have it on video if you want to watch it.
It's super gross. But to Tommy's credit,
he
doesn't tap.
He doesn't tap,
but it also doesn't break. It doesn't break. I think it sprains his leg a little bit.
I think it pulls some shit out of line, let me tell you. But I don't think it... But he still used it for the rest of the match, so it's not like it was that, Yeah. There's a certain amount of adrenaline, I'm sure, that's hiding some of that shit.
It wasn't like Mikey Musumeci versus the Sambo guy where it's like the leg's completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Where you're watching, it's like, hey, man, his leg's broken. Like, it's done.
Yeah.
It was Langakker. How Langakker got out of this was twofold. One, Langakker has pretty good flexibility.
Yeah.
And because he's top level. He's been top level for a decade now. And also, he was fighting Taza's lower leg and top side knee while pushing, so that Taza had his shoulders up in the position and was never able to get control of the knee line enough to be able to hip over to the other side. Like when Craig Jones broke Vinny Magalhaes' foot off in that event at SUG, you saw that Craig Jones was able to turn his body and shoulders away and actually like break the foot off of the joint.
Yeah.
Taza was never able to drop his shoulders flat because Langakker was defending the legs, pulling the leg out, and had both legs at one point, or had one or the other leg to be able to open the knee line up to prevent Taza from being able to have that pressure. So it was a really, although it looked super gross, and this is something I found a victim of a lot, is you start looking at just one guy's foot or knee that's about to explode, and you don't look at the defense. So go back and watch this if you're listening to the show. Go back and watch what Taza's doing, and then watch it again and look at where Langakker's hands are, and look at what Langakker is doing to his own knee and like moving through.
Oh, shit, sorry.
It's all good.
Volume on.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
Well, this is the zoom in. The zoom in on the Instagram. So go back to watch it on Fight Pass. And then Langakker, off of that footlock, then passes into side control. And you see Taza, and the commentary picks up on this as well, which I love. They're like, yeah, man, Taza's a little, they don't use the word dejected, but they use the word, not demoralized, but like, I just threw a great heel hook at this guy. I'm one of the best in the world at this. He didn't tap, and now, like, I have to continue to fight him. And
I made us go back to a 2013 match?
2018.
2018 match where Tommy Langakker was being armbarred by Dante Leon.
Break. I think you said we didn't look into it too deep, but it was.
We don't know if he broke his arm.
Pans March 2018. Pans in the gi.
In the gi.
And be Dante in the gi 2 days.
Yeah.
Or for this thing we're talking about from 2018 and today in Fight to Win.
Yeah.
Dante Leon like breaks Langakker's arm, but like kind of.
I mean, it looks like it's broken. Like if you look at it,
holding his arm, and allegedly, we think what you thought had happened was later in that tournament, Leon has to come back in and replace Langakker because Langakker is unable to continue. I don't remember exactly what happened.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what happened, but
this would have been year 1 of Grappling Rewind, so there's a lot I don't remember about that.
Yeah,
because it was me learning a whole lot about professional submission grappling.
And this wasn't. I don't know if this would have been something we would have super paid attention to.
Well, it would have been Nogi. It would have been Pans. We would have done Pans in 2018, but I don't know what round of Pans it would have been in.
Yeah,
is my only question. So,
I mean, they were posting pictures of it.
We know Langakker is tough, and we know that Langakker is won't tap a lot of times. But I think he was doing what he needed to do to free the knee line. You didn't see the leg break.
Yeah.
And you saw Langakker continue to use it. He passes. He gets the Taza's back in the first. So this is one of those matches where there are 3 sections.
Yeah.
The match is broken up into the first third, the second third, and the third third, and you win the match if there is no submission by essentially judge's decision for the first sections of the match. If any organization wants to use rounds, I think Polaris has figured it out where you just judge the rounds by time. You don't have a break between the rounds. I think I would love for ADXC to use this style instead of the round breaks. Just judge the whole match. If it's a 10-minute match, judge it in 3-minute, 30-second intervals. If it's a 15-minute match, judge it in 5-minute intervals. Yeah. But they break it up. So Langakker in the beginning of the match gets Taza's back. Looks really good. Very, very flexible and ability to like continue to push Taza over the center line repeatedly in a way that I was really impressed. I've always been really impressed with Tommy's ability to do that, but it looked amazingly clean and consistent.
Yeah.
Taza gets this gross heel hook in the second section of the match.
Taza kind of won the middle of the match.
Yeah.
But then Langakker
passes and then just
to his credit uses that freaking leg, which I'm like, whoa, you're using that leg to then get, mount and like is
working towards the back and kind of gets the back a bit later. Never really like super secure. He still
doesn't like solidify
fighting the whole time to maintain on Taza, and Taza's doing a great job defending because of all those years of EBI training. Like Taza's amazingly slippery. We saw Joseph Chen struggle the whole time. We've seen everyone consistently struggle to hold Taza's back. Taza's very, very good, and if you ever have your back taken, Taza never gets into a static position from the back mount. He's always moving from side to side and rotating. He's always forcing you to take upper hand grips over top of his shoulders to control him. Langakker does a great job of this, but I think it's two very, very good, solid positional sections of the match. At the first, at the end for Langakker, and that middle one for Taza. And Taza, they stand up at the end, and Taza kind of like points to Langakker like, he took that one because that's how it's scored.
Through Polaris, they kept on saying that generally in the past they had taken submission attempts as one of the biggest things that they scored things on. And this time that they are doing positional work and scoring attempts.
Was that correct? Because that's what I heard them say,
that's
and
what
I
they
thought
said.
that was reversed.
No, they said that they're almost putting more weight into positional work this time around.
Okay.
Because
they said that on the broadcast.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I thought that it was that somebody had misspoke on the broadcast.
They said it more than once. So.
Okay.
Because I watched the whole thing because I had nothing to do yesterday, so I watched Polaris and then I watched Fight to Win, and that's what I did.
Yeah, you were texting. You reminded me, hey, Polaris is on. Like, sweet, so I turned it on. Yeah. I got to watch the tail end of it live, and then went back and watch the replay.
Isn't this leg lock the first thing you saw when you turned on Polaris?
Yeah, you said it was on, and I clicked it on, and then in the chat, it was somebody, I think it was you, was like, "That was super gross, wasn't it?" And I clicked back 30 seconds, and it immediately, I see this. The first thing I see was just like, that is really gross, huh? Hell yeah, Polaris! I love to see it. And then between matches, I backed up and watched the rest of it, and then when it finished, I went back and watched some of the earlier stuff as well. And then we watched Fight to Win. It was great. So Langakker takes that versus Taza. This was great. I would love to see these guys continue. The match at Europeans was good. Nogi Europeans was good. This match was good. They're in the same division. We're going to see them again at Trials.
Yeah.
I think one of these gentlemen is going to take under 77 at Trials.
Oh, yeah.
At European Trials. Like, they both had to fight Joseph Chen. Now Chen has the slot for Trials. I would not be surprised for this to be your finals at Trials.
On Craig Jones's podcast, they go into Joseph Chen and all of his nationalities.
Oh, really?
Yes.
God, there was
a clip. It's all explained.
There was a clip
and I was
today.
like, oh, that makes sense.
So I talked to Joseph Chen at East Coast Trials a little bit and got some more information about it. And but it's good to have it on a codified podcast. They were also giving shit to Nikki Ryan. Because Nikki Ryan was also on the podcast too, and it was good in the clips that I saw. Yeah. So also speaking of trials and me dropping my phone, Owen Jones defeats Bart Doubleman via decision. Owen Jones is the European ADCC under 66 kilogram champion, moving on to. He again punched his ticket to the slot to the Worlds.
So the position that he kept on putting himself in is actually a position that I've accidentally fell into before, and I didn't realize that was actually an attacking position.
Oh yeah, awesome.
The
reverse mount.
Reverse mount. Didn't realize that was a thing.
Oh yeah,
I've been there before. I was there once in a tournament, scared shitless because I had no idea what to do.
I spent too long at white and blue belt playing from this position.
Really?
Because I
never thought this was an actual thing.
Yeah, because I learned that there's a toe hold here and there's a really good drop off for a knee bar. Okay. So this is a position that I have at blue belt. I spent a lot of time doing low percentage bullshit. I spent a long time before I realized I need to learn how to do better jiu-jitsu. Owen Jones is at a level where he can go back to this sort of stuff. And Owen Jones talked about wanting to put a stamp on the match, want to get Bart out of there really quickly. Yeah. And he told the commentary staff, I'm going to pull this reverse mount position here. Yeah. I'm going to go for his legs. I'm going to beat him in under a minute and a half. And in the beginning, I thought he was absolutely going to be able to do that.
But Bart did a great job. I mean, his leg defense was amazing.
And this is a really, really hard position to defend from because
it's weird as hell.
It's uncommon. And with what Owen Jones is going for, he's going for an inside toe, not inside toe, a regular toe hold here. Yeah. But in order to defend this, you have to sit back and basically block your own foot with your butt close and get closer to the foot, put the foot closer to your butt versus further away. Almost every other toe hold defense involves extending out. Yeah. For this position, based on where the hand grip and where the knees are going to be, you have to get closer because it essentially strips the hands off of your foot.
I wonder if somebody had given Bart the information on dude, this guy's gonna get this really weird guard on you. You need to learn.
I think Owen was talking about it. I think he would have probably. I
didn't know. I didn't know if he just talked about it before the match or if it was significantly before the match.
I couldn't figure that out either
because he seemed to have a very good defense to some really unorthodox kind of attacks.
Yeah.
You know,
well, Owen has really, really good, and we saw here really good entries into the legs off of that position. I also liked that both Bart defended this position and Owen was willing at a certain point to like realize, okay, I've exhausted what I can kind of attack from this position. You know, the toe hold's not there. Bart's figured out what he has to do to get out of the toe hold. So I'm going to go for the outside leg locks. And we saw some attacks from Bart as well through leg locks, but I just thought Owen had, you know, pretty consistently the much better offense throughout the match, which is, again, why he wins the decision. But I was just really impressed with this inverted pull into this reverse mount to immediately go for the legs. I like seeing guys that are going to ADCC being able to implement kind of odd strategies at will. Like, hey, I'm going to go and choose to do this niche position and then be able to go and do it. Even though he doesn't get the submission, he's still able to implement that, and it's like an unorthodox game plan. Yeah. And I like seeing guys being able to have a diverse game plan that's like not just like I'm gonna go wrestle him. Like no, I'm gonna pull this specific position and go for this thing. Yeah. It's cool to see that. This is a fun match. I was honestly really surprised with how entertaining this match was. I think I also come out of here impressed with Bart in this match. I think he's a purple belt. I don't think he's a brown belt.
But I don't think Owen's a brown belt, is he? I think he's a purple belt. Or if he's a new brown.
There's no country for old men here. These are both two younger gentlemen that are just, it doesn't matter, beating black belts. I was impressed with Doubleman's defense here. He looked good. Again, I want to see Owen Jones and more Polaris cards, especially if he's going to come out aggressive like this and hunt for the submission the entire time. It was good. It was impressive. We're definitely going to see more of Owen Jones and probably see more from Bart Doubleman here in the future. We also had on this card, can you give me Marcin's last name? Because we've been saying it a couple weeks.
Mashulowitz?
Marcin defeats Max Bickerton via decision. Marcin is the guy that won the Polaris Trials.
Yeah.
Or the Polaris
and then
qualifier.
Went in against Kynan.
He got Kynan first round of the GP, which makes sense. You take your top guy versus your qualifier winner. That's pretty standard for how these qualifier slots run. I was really impressed with Marcin. Showed really good passing, showed really consistent control and movement. Like everything about Marcin in this match. He's young too.
And Marcin also had the duct tape foot.
Yeah, he cut his foot on the walkout.
Yeah.
And then
they couldn't.
Like bleeding.
And then they couldn't get it to stop bleeding.
So they just duct taped it together.
Do you know what that reminded me of? Years ago, one of the first Fight to Wins I ever
Mateo
went
Nunes.
to. Yeah, where they duct taped his head.
Go back and watch Fight to Win.
It was in Frederick.
53.
It was in Maryland.
It is the first. Don't ever listen to the episode. It is Grappling Rewind episode 1, Fight to Win 53 or 52. One of the 52 in Maryland.
Yeah,
and
it was right about this time of year too.
It was November of 2017.
Yeah,
because that was the inaugural.
Yeah, I know because the picture came up. Like I was going through my pictures, and all of a sudden I was like, oh.
In that match, there is a head clash, and Mateo Nunes, who was a brown belt at the time, been a black belt for a while at this point.
Yeah.
He's
from Virginia.
He's in a white gi, and his head is just like spraying blood everywhere, and it is the bloodiest gi match I have ever seen.
And they just duct tape his head.
Well, they can't get his head. It's a head wound, and if you ever have seen like a head wound on the top, they tend to bleed profusely. Yeah. And it's the beginning of the match. Both guys, the venue is overpacked.
Yeah,
it is loaded. It was the first time Fight to Win ever come to Maryland. It was a crazy card.
Yeah.
And these guys are brown belts. They're up pretty high in the card.
Yeah.
And Mateo's head is just bleeding. And eventually they just they've done electrical tape. They've done every tape they can find in the venue. They get the duct tape. And Mateo goes, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Whatever you got to do to get this done to keep this match going, let's do it. And just wrap his head with duct tape. And Mateo is not bald. No. He has hair, and it's in his hair, and they wrap it up. Yeah. And they finish the match. And it was the bloodiest gi match I have ever seen. I forget who Mateo is facing in that match, but Mateo Nunes.
I just remember him. Anyway.
So last time, whenever we see duct tape on the match, I think of the same thing.
Yeah, and for whatever reason,
that particular, because I think we had VIP tables for that. So it was one of my coaches, Greg, who owns the gym.
Okay.
My wife, and I was next to my wife, and we were in the splash zone of Fight to Win. So his head was there. I was like, we might get blood on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great event. Love the Fight to Win finally came back to Maryland 2 weeks ago. So that was Polaris. Marcin, again, looks very impressive. Would love to see him back on the main card after this performance. Looks very good. Very consistent, strong, well-rounded game, which is absolutely what I want to see from, the brown belt competitors getting showcased on these sort of cards. Anything else you want to talk about on Polaris?
No, but now I see there was a reverse bulldog choke, and I so want to see that because that's basically...
Wow, it's on the prelim card.
It's basically an executioner, right?
Yeah.
Because your bulldog's this way, so it has to be...
and they rope. So I saw one of those back on an early NEF card.
I need to go back and watch
New England Fights card. Some guy hit... Basically, it only usually happens if someone does a spin through on their own accord. So for reverse bulldog choke, you essentially have to do it in escaping a bulldog choke or a guillotine.
So you have to go the wrong direction.
And you spin through, and usually people get out, but if their arm can hold it here, you can still choke from
I need to go back and watch that. And Dominic Dillon defeated Claudio Brudley via Brundy.
Via reverse bulldog choke, which is super uncommon. We see probably 2 of them a year.
I've been teaching our brand new wrestler white belts bulldog jokes.
Oh, Jesus,
they've been fucking taking people's heads off.
Why would you teach them that?
Because it's perfect.
It is
because it works for their game so well.
It does work for their game so well. So that happened on the player. I haven't seen the prelim card yet. It's a separate video. It's hard to find on Fight Pass.
I started watching. I think right around like the second to last one because for whatever reason on UFC Fight Pass they were playing the prelim card. So I caught like the first 2 as I was driving home from the gym.
There's separate videos now. I need to go back and find the prelim card because again, Polaris prelims are always great as well. So that does it for Polaris 26. Some very exciting matchups, fun card. Love to see Craig Jones go out there pushing the pace and getting it done real quick in the main event. It was awesome. Now, moving on to the preview section for the show, we have a card that I am super excited about. A new organization.
We missed Fight to Win.
We are going to talk about Fight to Win 240. I have notes right here, too, on the screen.
We missed Fight to Win.
Dante Leon taking on Andrew Party in the gi.
In the gi.
You, on the pre-show, were talking about this and about Dante.
Yeah, because... I do not want this to sound like it is mean in any way, but you can definitely tell that Dante in this match slowed himself down so that he could be like, hey, look, I'm using the gi. Because he could have finished the match a lot faster than he did.
We've seen Dante's gi game and no gi game. We've seen him.
But it definitely looked like he was like, I went to untuck the gi and I went to try
Dante
gi things.
Take the gi out and like Levin even the commentator was like, he's showing he can use the gi.
Yeah,
and he was in the Adamas Jiu-Jitsu gi.
The commentators were Adamas Jiu-Jitsu guys.
Yeah, they were guys that were under Dante essentially.
Yeah.
It was just very funny to see Dante go and play in the gi.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was like, look, he's actually showing that he's in a gi and he knows how to use it, and I felt like that's part of what he did, which was
we know Dante from being able to, from doing gi and no gi because again, he used to be pretty equal between the two, and then only in the last, I think, probably 4 or 5 years has really been significantly more no gi. Ever since 4th at ADCC in 2019. He's been much more of a no-gi competitor. And even when I interviewed him at Kasai, he talked about doing both. That was in 2019. We see him more. He's world ranked in no-gi. He's one of the best no-gi guys in the world. So it is funny to see him come back over and then showcase that, I can use the gi. He finishes a modified Ezekiel from the side, like a side choke, kind of from 3/4 mount or a mount.
Is that a diesel squeezle?
No, a diesel squeeze was going to be with a fist up.
Okay, it's
a punch choke.
That's
or
like a punch choke. It's not a okay.
A diesel squeeze was just an underhanded Ezekiel punch choke.
Yeah.
Dante Leon finishes just a side choke,
it's an
Ezekiel, but because the body's to the side, the way that it attacks the neck is a little different. So you call it Ezekiel, it's fine. I know it is a side choke, and I would. If I was calling the match, I would call it a side choke.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. The mechanism in the hand and how you pull it.
I was thinking
really
he was trying to go for a bread cutter, and I was like, yes, the bread cutter. But
you can there. But Dante Leon finishes that with, 2 minutes? Something like that, real quick. You saw that Dante, took his time to play through the gi.
Yeah.
Gave Party the respect that, he had in the gi, but moved through.
Yeah, and I mean, it takes a a lot of guts to go against somebody like Dante Leon.
Dante Leon on
as
like
a main
week
event.
notice.
Yeah, as a main event.
That was awesome.
So
to see. Also on the card, we had Max Hansen. I don't have his.
He defeated Toro.
Yeah.
I forget Toro was his last name.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not Del Toro because that's another person.
Yeah, somebody on one of the other cards we're going to preview here.
Yeah, it was. Give me a second. I will tell you because the gentleman actually,
we were kind of impressed. He put up a good fight.
Yeah, he did. He went against Toro Santana.
Yeah.
Which was a great match. And yeah, it's Max Hansen is continuing to win everything that he puts himself into.
Dude, he's in the Finishers Open coming up, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in the 170 who's number one.
For who's number one qualifier.
So,
yeah, fight to win's awesome. Again, I love to see Dante in the gi. I love to see these sort of matchups as he, preps for his next who's number one match.
Yeah.
I like guys staying active. I'm a huge fan of Dante Leon. He's been one of our favorite guys to talk about for the past 6 years.
I think Dante Leon's girlfriend won her match. I'm almost positive, actually, she won her match earlier in the day, too, because she was on the card, too.
Good for them.
So
now we move on to a card that I'm pretty excited about that kind of came out of nowhere a couple weeks ago for us. Main Character Jiu-Jitsu. It's an organization I don't think we've had. I know
Texas.
We haven't had a chance to cover before or talk about on the show.
They've had a lot of like Texas talent doing it because I remember seeing like Trinity Pun did it.
We maybe have talked about this before.
There's a couple people that like from that kind of area that's been doing it. I know they did a few women's brackets that were pretty like significant. Nicole Matthew, who's local to us, did it because I think she went against Trinity Pun.
They've been each other a couple of times.
So yeah, quite a few times.
So they are running a men's 185-pound bracket. I think the pay-per-view for this is like $25, a little more on the expensive side, but let me tell you who's on the card. So we got PJ Barch, Hunter Colvin, Oliver Taza, Nathan Haddad, Felipe Caesar, David Arce, Jonathan Wilson, JB Betchloff, Joab Oliveira, Achilles Rocha, Ryan Atkin, Caleb Crump, Chris Wojcik, Fedor Nikolov, Cade Anastasas, and Michael Esquivel.
Yeah.
At least 10 of those guys on that card well. PJ Barch just had a really tough match against Andrew Tackett that he wasn't able to win, and then got flash KO'd and armbarred by Mika Gavao, but in the last year before that, beat JT Torres at ADCC.
Yeah.
And almost beat Cade Ruotolo at ADCC, and then Cade had to pull it out at the end and armbar him.
And his gym looks fun as shit. Like, he just opened up a 10th Planet, and everybody and their mother seems to be there training. Like, I know Craig Jones was there training at one point. Like,
yeah, a lot of guys are over there training.
It seems like a cool spot. So good for him.
PJ Barch, one of the best guys in the world. And he's the top slot in this bracket. We have Hunter Colvin.
We think he's the top spot. Do we know?
I would say these folks that that PJ Barch is the front runner here. Like, Barch looked amazing. I am curious how he's going to look after the Tackett match and after, like, if he has any sustained injuries from the Mika Gavao match that he had to fill in that tournament. I hope he does not, because Barch, again, when Barch is on, he's looked on recently. One of the best guys in the world. Hunter Colvin, bigger guy, make 185. He is the West Coast Trials ADCC silver medalist from 2022.
Okay.
He had that match with J-Rod where he got buggied at the end, but he was winning that aside from the buggy choke. So Hunter Colvin is a monster. There's a lot of MMA, but has been putting out some really, really interesting instructionals recently on Instagram where he like breaks stuff down really well. Again, we've been talking about Hunter Colvin since he was like a purple belt. He's super hard to beat. Oliver Taza, who just spent a big section of the last card talking about on Polaris, he's in here. David Arce, we haven't had a big chance to talk about David very much. He's a guy at a new wave. Oh, Davis Arce.
Yeah.
He's a guy at a new wave. He had a match with Andy Varela at one of the opens for ADCC, and we kind of watched him, and then I don't know if he beat Varela or didn't beat Varela, but it was a really, really good match with Andy Varela, and David showed off his wrestling. Davis, sorry. He was going to go to trials because he is European, but he got sick, so he couldn't make European trials. He was one of the guys that I was really, really curious about seeing at Europeans. He's a guy that a lot of folks are going, yeah, you should definitely watch out for him because he's been training a lot with Gordon, all the new wave guys, and is on that like roster moving forward. He was on Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds. We have JB Bechlov, who we've talked about for years. Achilles Rocha. I'm kind of curious how Achilles is going to look after trials.
Yeah.
He had a couple tough matches at trials. Did he make day 2 or did he not make day 2?
I didn't think he made day 2.
I'm really curious how Achilles is going to look.
Yeah.
Because, again, the trial, he seemed a little off at trials. And it could be travel, it could be the event.
I wonder if he did the Open this weekend, because I know his sister did the Open this weekend.
Jasmine did the Open?
She won, yeah.
Okay.
I think she double golded at the Open. I think she did absolute.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
She looked fantastic at trials.
So I don't know if he did it or not.
Yeah, we should. I will check that after. So again, Achilles is a monster and in game for it. He just looked a little off at trials, so I'm just curious. I've been seeing a lot of footage of him training with Cyborg in Miami.
Yeah.
Because they're affiliated, and it's been looking like his wrestling has been looking really good in the training footage that I have seen. So curious about Achilles. And then we also have Ryan Atkin, always in the mix as well. And we have Chris Wojcik and Fedor Nikolov. So Fedor is the guy that we saw. He was on the 10th Planet qualifier, won. He ended up in that big bracket with, was it the one with Big Dan and Nicky Rod, or was it the one with...
No, it was...
It was Fight Pass Invitational.
Yeah.
It was that one.
Because it was...
Who did he beat in the first round? He got knee-barred by Big Dan later in that event.
Yeah. But he won against somebody that we didn't...
He beat Haisam Rita.
Yeah.
That was the match. And so we were kind of curious about how Fedor would look in that matchup. And then he took that match over Haisam, and that was, I think, surprised a lot of people. So he's in this as well. There's a lot of folks that can take this. I'm curious what rule set it's going to be in, but it is in Austin, Texas. It does have all these guys in here. I'm curious how it's going to be bracketed. It should be fun. $25 is, again, a little on the more expensive side for a pay-per-view, but a huge, wealth of talent on this bracket. I'm curious enough about it that I'm gonna pay for it and watch it. It should be fun. So check it out. Any other kind of closing thoughts on main character?
No, Achilles was in Orlando Open, though he took 9th in his division. Oh, but he won. So he won the 15 to 17-year-old advanced bracket.
Yeah. And then an adult under 100 kilos.
Yeah.
Well, under 100 kilos, is that absolute or is that
No, it's
weight?
under, because I don't think you want to go against Dad.
Oh, his dad did under 91.
Dad did under 91.
Okay.
I mean, maybe you want to go against your dad. Maybe you don't want to go against your dad.
Also on main character, we have a super title fight, women's 125, Sofia Casella versus Jasmine Hosha.
Yeah.
Is that a rematch? Was that trials?
I think they've won against each other multiple times. And maybe not super recently, but Sophia is... No, they're the same size.
Did they go with trials? I thought this matchup happened at trials.
Let me
I could be wrong. That's a banger matchup for a women's title fight at 125. That should be.
If not,
a lot of
they've
fun.
gone against each other at the Opens, because both ladies do the Opens all the time.
Yeah, both of them are super frequent there. They're also doing a bunch of 3 versus 3 matchups. I'm not exactly sure how that's gonna go, but between the main event super fight between Casella and Rocha, that's really fun, and the men's 16-man under 185 super fight, like that's a really great bracket, and that will be a ton of fun. That's all I got for main character. You can find it on Instagram and all the links to that stuff. Also coming up this week, we have the Finishers Open, which actually is the first time finishers run a qualifier for who's number 1. So this is an under 170-pound qualifier to get into the next who's number 1 at that weight. I think it's great. I love, again, we've talked about it for years. I love qualifiers. It gives folks an opportunity to win their way into a big major tentpole event. And that's how we've seen a lot of our really, really big talented folks come out of these qualifiers and get the show and get the shine that they need in order to get onto the kind of the big roster of professional events and kind of get noted to get called up for those events. So
yep, and we have right now, currently we have 16 approved registrations and 14 unapproved registrations. I have no idea what that means. I think it means they didn't pay yet.
Sometimes, but
'Cause
we have at
sometimes
least
with-
16,
yeah.
a bracket of 16 for
Yeah,
this.
and it's we have Zach Maslany.
Yep, the guy that runs
The
finishers.
guy who runs
He's
finishers.
always, again, Zach's always jumping into these things that I love to see. Zach's retired a
Yeah.
couple of times, but he always game for it. Got a really dope rubber guard,
And we
so
have
it's cool to see him.
Jake Strauss. He's a Wagner Hosha guy.
Mm-hmm.
We have Zach Galliani.
Yeah, I always mess up Zach's last name.
Yeah, 50-50 guy that we've seen quite a few times. Christos Papadelos. Henzo Gracie Austin, which makes him New Wave.
Oh, is he New Wave?
Henzo Gracie Austin
is New Wave.
is New Wave.
But
it's
sometimes guys register as New Wave, but on Smooth Comp, I don't know if they can.
and he might be a junior. That might be the wave.
So he registers
junior,
at Henzo's.
That might be
Okay.
the junior wave registering. I
Yeah.
don't know. We have Renee Souza. Let's see who else. We have Evan
Levy.
Is it Levy?
Yeah, Evan
Levy.
Levy. Which is Amanda Levy's younger brother.
Yeah.
I think based on his name, that's what his
No,
name
I'm
is.
pretty
I
sure.
assume it is actually him.
I'm pretty sure it is. And then we have who else?
Dylan Garofalo.
Garofalo, 10th Plant, Long Island. Nicholas Creighton is an Adamus Jiu-Jitsu guy.
So one of Dante's guys.
One of Dante's guys. So he's probably a beast.
Is Max Hansen not in this one?
No, he's not in it.
Oh, okay, maybe we got that wrong.
He might already be on Who's Number One, so it doesn't matter,
That would make sense.
right? Because
Yeah.
he's been on Who's Number One. So we have some other gentlemen. Hopefully we'll.
It should be a fun card.
Yeah,
Again,
it'll be fun.
The opens are always kind of, they're opens, and
Yeah.
so it gives people an opportunity to go and win a slot. They're cool to see. I love that Finishers is partnering with Who's Number One to do that. Also on the card, we have a 135-pound title fight, Layla Watkins versus Chrissy Briggs. We have a 135-pound men title fight, Ray De Leon versus Yuki Takahashi from Imanari's,
Oh,
which is cool. So I look for both these guys. Again, Ray De Leon, notorious leg locker. So I bet that we're going to see a lot of that from Yuki as well. And we have a heavyweight title fight between Pat Strigoli and Ryan Roth. I'm hoping to get my interview that I did with Pat at Trials out this week. That is the hope. Things have been a little busy on my end, more so than usual. So those two guys are going against it. I think they've met before. So look out for that one too. Again, big heavyweights. I think it's a heavyweight super fight. I think Ryan has, I forget what belt Ryan has, but this is essentially actually like a two-divisional or a two-organization super fight between the both of them for this.
He might be. Is he Soji? No, because
Pat's Soji.
Soji.
I don't remember. Ryan
Yeah.
has another heavyweight belt locally, and this is, again, these guys have gone at each other. This was a match to make for him, so that's the heavyweight title. We also have a couple other super fights on the card that should be a lot of fun, and that is Finishers Open and the Who's Number One qualifier November 12th. We also had Midwest Finishers coming up this following week as well. That's going to take place on November 11th. And on that, for Midwest Finishers, a couple of names. We have a Women's Absolute Championship, which is a lot of fun. I always love seeing the Women's Absolutes. You get again, for the Men's Absolutes, you tend to get mostly only bigger men.
Yeah.
For the Women's Absolutes, you tend to get a much greater variety of sizes, and I really like that. I just did a commentary on an Absolute this weekend with Zach and myself, who went down to Copa, Virginia, and Diallo Braithwaite won that. He was the smallest guy in the Absolute. I think he was about 160, a little bigger than me. And in the finals, he went against a guy I think that was like 260 pounds.
Yeah,
and he was able to win. And it's awesome. Again, we're seeing the smaller guys have some success in the absolute. So we had a great time commenting that. If you want to see or listen to that, you can find that in the next couple of weeks on Instagram and on YouTube, and hear Zach and I commentate that. But it's cool to have women's absolute because you get a large variety of competitor sizes. We have Peyton Letcher in this one, European trials winner from not this last European trials, but 2 trials ago, so 2021. Peyton would have won that doing MMA, and we've seen her on Rise, and very, very frequent competitor on Midwest Finishers and all throughout any pro card. Peyton's usually a big, big staple there. We also have Christina Hansen, John Hansen's wife. We saw her out at Trials, and we've seen her on some other super fights and at UWW Worlds for World Wrestling. She competes in that along with John frequently. So those are 2 of the big names that I'm seeing here.
That one woman has a rabbit. Look at that rabbit.
Tara Lewis is in the photo with a
large long hair rabbit, I think.
Look at that.
It's a rabbit, right?
I believe so, yes.
I think that's a rabbit. I want to do that. My next picture, I want a duck. I want to pick up one of my ducks, and I'll put it in the picture with me.
We also have a number of super fights for this, including a main event super fight between John Mike and Max Hansen.
Yep.
So this is where Max Hansen is this next weekend.
Yep.
But again, don't put it past Max Hansen to be on 2 cards in different days. He has done it before. He has had title fights back-to-back days in different locations.
The other thing we learned this weekend is that Strong Style, an MMA more based gym, is now under Dante Leon.
Yeah.
And Adamus.
Yeah.
So they're all the Northern Ohio. Big
if you're
gyms.
a guy in Northern Ohio, Dante's your guy now.
Dante's your guy now, and they're all in that pedigo world.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yep, that organization's really expanding. So this will be fun for Midwest finishers. Again, I don't want to read through all of the names. They're usually pretty big cards, but they're a lot of fun, showcasing a lot of national and Midwestern talent, which is why we really love Midwest finishers. So those are the events that are happening next weekend. I don't think we have anything else that I have missed. Miranda, you think I'm missing anything?
I'm looking. I'm thinking about it. No, because I think everything else is coming up. We have the what is that thing called? The crown coming up, but that's in 2 weeks.
The IBJJF crown for men's crown and women's crown. So those brackets look really fun.
Yeah.
We have Grapple Fest coming up in 2 weeks. Liverpool, that is November 18th. So we'll preview that next week. We got Kieran Kachuk and William Tackett on that card. Those are different.
We have all the
matchups.
Tackets.
All 3 Tackets are on this card.
All the Tackets are on the card.
I'm curious if Andrew is going to be healed for this one, but it'll be fun. So we'll preview that this coming week. We got a fun couple of weeks grappling planned up ahead.
Sounds good.
You got any fun plans this week, Miranda?
I have to go to Terre Haute, Indiana tomorrow. They have a pedigo in town. Allegedly, they have a class on Monday night that I'm going to try to.
That'd be good.
I'm going to try to run into. So we're going to see.
That'd be good.
But yeah, that Terre Haute, there's nothing else in Terre Haute.
Except for Pedigo, so we're going there.
Except for Pedigo in a federal prison. Yeah. That's about it.
So I'm much this week really just trying to clean up the house. We had some house issues. We've torn out a bathroom completely, and so we've learned how to retile and all that fun.
Fun times.
What you can't see behind the camera is the entire recording studio is exploded.
I would retile over drywall any day.
Yeah, we're doing both.
Drywall is horrible.
So that's what's going on with me. Hopefully to train a little bit. Finally healed up my leg and kind of groin injury, so I'm training a little more there. But yeah, just excited for some fun cards. I finally have a weekend off, maybe next weekend after 2 weeks in a row of doing commentary.
I have no weekends off because I have to coach Saturday.
I may
good fight.
I may ref that. They've asked me.
Okay.
I've said I couldn't, but I might right before I decide that I'm going to go down.
If any purple belts actually show up, but at this point, no one's showed up except for me. So probably not.
So I might be there as well with you to coach, but I'm hopefully going to have the next week off to finish up the interviews for West Coast Trials or for East Coast Trials that I haven't had a chance to get out. If you want to find those, they're on the Grappling Rewind YouTube page. And that's all I got.
Yep.
Anything else? All right.
Nope.
Well, as always in the show, I'm your host, Maine. It's my co-host,
Miranda.
We have the Grappling Rewind, saying that what it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.